Hi, I'm just looking at how I'm going to use these boards to make up the 10-inch boards I need for my wall-mounted plane and saw storage unit. I need 10 inches, and if I put these three boards together I get almost 11. So once I've cleaned up all the edges and cleaned up the glued up panel, I will get 10 inches. Now these particular boards are 72 and a smidge inches long, and I need 36 inches. These are a smidge over 36, so they're great, but if I cut those in half with a normal saw, I'm going to end up with slightly less than 36 inches. That's not good. I mean, I could work around it obviously, but if I want to make sure it is dead on 36 inches, what am I going to do? The saw curve cutting through here with a normal Western saw is going to take too much material away. So I'm going to have to go to a Japanese saw with a really thin curve. But I'm also going to have to cut it dead accurate. It's going to be perfectly square and it's going to be perfectly plumb. Because if I do anything wrong with that cut, once I've squared it up, again the boards are going to be too short. So I've come up with an idea. Luckily the ends of the boards are perfectly square. They're actually slats from a bed, so they've been cut in the factory. And that's excellent. That means I don't have to worry about those ends. And I can measure into the center of the board. And what I'm going to do is measure from both ends those 36 inches that I want. And I'm going to mark it with a knife. And if you can see those two marks there, it sort of shows what I was saying about it not being wider than the kerf of a Western saw. So any Western saw trying to cut through there is going to take away too much material. But a Japanese Dazuku saw with a thin plate, thin flexible plate, that'll just about go through there and not remove too much material. But I've got to keep it perfectly square, can't be out of square, and I have to be perfectly plumb. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of melamine faced chipboard, could be anything really, but with straight edges on there. So what I'm going to do is set my square right between those two marks, right in the middle. And then I'm going to take a little piece of acetate here, which I've measured with calipers to be half the thickness of the saw plate. Add that to the edge of the square and butt up to it this piece of melamine faced chipboard. You could use MDF as well, doesn't really matter, as long as it's got a straight edge to it. Butt that up and then clamp it to the work. Once that's done, I can use the saw plate itself to set up the gap to a piece on the other side. Clamp that to the work, and then I've got a perfect guide for the saw plate. Now, however, when I've done that, or if I do that, although my saw plate will go in there, because the teeth have got a slight set on it, they won't, so I can't start the cut. So what I'm going to do before I clamp those on is I'm going to take a little block plane, put a slight chamfer right at the bottom corner. Just make enough room for the set of the teeth. Then, although the teeth can't go in at the top, I'll be able to feed it in from one edge. So I'll get that clamped up. Now with those clamped in place, you can see that the teeth of the saw won't drop through. The plate just does, and it's nice and tight, and we can insert the saw because of the slight gap that we left behind. That's easier said than done. So I'll just clamp that down on the bench itself whilst I saw it. I'm not going to go all the way through because that gives a chance of tearing out on the back side. But what I will do is stop just before I get there, and the saw kerf will give me enough of a guide for the rest of the cut. Now, of course, it would be possible to set these two pieces up connected underneath on a sort of fence so that you could just slot them on wherever you wanted to on a piece of work. So that's nearly all the way through. I'm going to finish that cut with a waste board underneath. And so there we have a perfectly straight, perfectly plumb cut, and the finish is great because of the fineness of the saw. There we have the three boards giving me the larger board that I need, and having wasted only a smidge of an inch with my cut. I'm very happy with that. Great tip. Cheerio.